Welcome to the Average Joe Jiu-Jitsu Podcast, episode 22, Eli Knight. Eli Knight is a second-degree black belt under Royce Gracie and has been the senior supervising instructor at Three Rivers Martial Arts, located at 3055 North Friendship Road, Unit 4 in Pudacog, Kentucky, for 2 decades. Eli Knight is best known for his contributions to self-defense and equating jiu-jitsu to address the needs of real-life altercations. Eli's social media presence is quite large, 252,000 subscribers on YouTube, making him one of the most visible advocates of the art, and he's been producing helpful content for years, sharing his approach to jiu-jitsu with the masses. Eli has a way of molding jiu-jitsu to fit any settings with a simple and easily digestible curriculum that all practitioners can subscribe to. He is incredibly well-spoken and his instruction is clear, concise, and direct, creating a very enjoyable learning experience for the student. Eli, thank you very much for coming on today and talking to me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me. That's my pleasure.
So as I read off in the introduction, like, I could personally say I have been a fan of yours for years. I've been training for 8 years, and you were one of the first personalities that I found on YouTube when I was looking for information, and I've watched you all those years. So I really enjoy your stuff. I was wondering, I guess we could have started at the beginning. Like, how did you get involved in martial arts, and how did it all start for you? How did you find Royce, etc.?
Well, I always tell people I started in a part of the country that, and at a time when typical martial arts that you would find around this area, in a small town in Kentucky, and so we had the normal like Taekwondo, karate, stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And I actually I did Taekwondo for a little while, and then as a teenager, I found a gentleman named Jason Hawkins who was training. He was already a black belt in jiu-jitsu, not Brazilian jiu-jitsu. More, it's easiest just to call it Japanese jiu-jitsu or traditional jiu-jitsu. And he was also training a lot of other stuff. He was training Jeet Kune Do. He was training Filipino martial arts. He was, fairly new into the game of all those. But he was just a batch of information and just a vacuum, just trying to study everything that he could. And that's what I liked. I really admired that approach. And so I started training under him. And this was right around the time, this is the early 90s, and it was right around the time of the UFCs. So, of course, being jiu-jitsu practitioners back then, and then watching the jiu-jitsu guy win in the UFCs, that's, kind of amazing for us. But obviously the jiu-jitsu that Royce was doing and his family was doing was something that was very new to all martial artists at the time, not just jiu-jitsu people, but so we started to try to follow him around the nation wherever he was doing a seminar that was reasonable for us to go to. We started hitting his seminars frequently enough. He started to recognize this group of guys from Kentucky. And eventually he asked us if we wanted to be an association of Gracie Academy, because back then he was with Gracie Academy with Horion and a few other instructors. And so we became an association. And then once he actually parted ways with Gracie Academy, we were one of his flagship networks. And kind of that's basically the history of it. We've stayed with Royce ever since. He is our every amount of rank past blue belt I've gotten from Royce. Started under him and his family when I was a white belt. Myself, Jason Hawkins, and a few other people got our blue belts from Grandmaster Eli, and then everything else came from Royce after that. And but yeah, that's basically the history of my jiu-jitsu. And now, in addition to that, I mean, I've learned all my fundamentals, all my foundation from Royce, and I continue to learn things from him, all the time. Just like I'll see a new detail even now from something he showed 20 years ago that I'll pick up on. But also, I really like the jiu-jitsu community, like every aspect of it for the most part. I mean, I like Ghee jiu-jitsu, no Ghee jiu-jitsu. I've got a lot of 10th Planet friends. I've got people in all walks of life in the community, and beyond that too. I've got a lot of martial arts friends that jiu-jitsu is not their main forte. So it's just I like to see the integration of all of it. I like the self-defense, and I like the sportive aspects too, and I think it's all good.
Awesome. So I did catch one point. You actually did train with Eli?
Yeah, a few times. I mean, I don't want to make it sound like I too frequent of a student under Grandmaster Eli, but I while we were training with Hoist, we trained several times when Grandmaster Eli would actually tour back then in the day. And, he would teach at the Gracie Academy periodically, and he would come to some seminars and to some camps and to cruises and things like that. And I was at one of these camps actually after we had been training for a little while. That me and the group that I was with, we, I guess, all had kind of enough experience. We all got our blue belts together, and it was kind of under the blessing of Grandmaster Elio. So it was, that was a very, very cool thing to have that experience for sure, to get to learn, from him. Of course, he would always have a translator, Horion would translate, because Elio never spoke English. But it was very cool to see how he would present the techniques. And I think, around the time that, the first time that I ever got to train in a setting where he was teaching, he was 86 years old, 85 or 86 years old. And so it was very cool.
Wow. What was it like? I mean, that was back in the 90s, correct? So yeah, what was it like back then to be training in jiu-jitsu? It seems like it was like, I guess what I'm asking is, like, today it's very mainstream. It's very like competition based, and it's I wouldn't, probably not the same everywhere you go, but there's a very sport emphasized way of doing jiu-jitsu now, but to the masses. What was it like back in the 90s when it was more like the dojo swarming and the Gracies and et cetera?
Yeah, I think it is very different now. I think that the sport has definitely, it's not that the self-defense aspect is no longer around. It's just that the sport has eclipsed it, obviously, which, I think that the sport has just evolved so quickly, and it's still constantly evolving. And that's a great thing. That's a really cool thing to see. And honestly, the level of technique that's out there right now, the level of skill and the learning curve is so sharp now. I mean, that's why you have like Colabates out there, and you have Rotolo brothers out there, and you have these kids who, the second that they get a blue belt on them, sometimes when they're still a green belt, they're already tapping black belts.
Right.
And that as a 40-something-year-old black belt, that's a bummer, but at the same time, it's very cool. If just from a respect standpoint, that's awesome to see.
Right.
But yeah, back in the 90s, though, man, I mean, back in the day, it was kind of like seeing. If you saw a purple belt back then, it was kind of like seeing a unicorn, like in the States, especially in the areas we were. So I remember, some of the early seminars that I went to back then. I see Carlos Machado. Like I saw Megaton was doing seminars back then. Didn't even speak very good English back then. And if he brought a brown belt with him, that was so rare to see something like that. And it was one of those things where it was very cool, because it was jiu-jitsu like really blew up so much because I don't know, it's not to overgeneralize or to sound degrading, but for the most part, if you saw somebody who was a martial artist, karate guy, taekwondo guy, kung fu guy, whatever he was, and even if he was a badass and he looked really good with his technique and his form and everything like that, he got to a fight, even if he did well in the fight, knock somebody out or beat somebody up, and a lot of the technique kind of went out the window. I mean, like, look at the early UFC, and it's like, it didn't look like it didn't look like whatever. With jiu-jitsu, it's like, the way that you train, you went in there and you did stuff, like, it looked like the stuff that you learned was functional pretty immediate. A lot of it was because of the grappling nature. I mean, so it was very cool to see that. But I mean, as far as getting back to kind of the atmosphere of what it was like back then, it was a little bit, I don't know, there was a laid back aspect of it. I really liked that, going into to study Brazilian jiu-jitsu, I guess, for lack of a better term, back then, it was like, you were going to learn something. There wasn't a big distinction of like, this is a sport technique or a self-defense technique. You would go in and you would learn a cross choke, you would learn like a scissor sweep, you would learn a hip throw, but then you'd also be talking about, well, the guy tries to punch you from, and we're wearing Ghees, which is now, people are going to look at you a little weird if you go in and you're going to teach like a bow and arrow choke and then talk about, well, if the guy's trying to hit you in the groin or if the guy's trying to bite you,
Right.
It's like, well, that's against the rules. You know, I mean, we don't have to address that. There's rules
Right.
against that. Back then, the rules were a little more material. The sport wasn't really delineated that much in most environments. Now, of course, even back in the 90s, though, like down in Brazil with the Mundials and everything like that, it was like there was the sport. But even with that, it was a little looser with rules, you know. So it's, you know, there's some things that were similar, some things that were very, very different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting how you're saying too about the, now if the guy's punching you, so forth. Like I went down into the rabbit hole in the last week, looking at a lot of your videos and stuff and looking for things to talk about. And one of the things that really interests me is the self-defense aspects of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, because that's really why I got into it. I mean, I did karate for 10 years when I was in junior high, and and later on, my young adulthood, I did, 18 years of traditional Japanese jiu-jitsu, like what you mentioned earlier. And one of the guys I trained with who did that, my last teacher in that was actually similar to the gentleman you mentioned, where he had done Jeet Kune Do and he did a bunch of other stuff. He's just a really good martial artist, just a badass, just very interesting guy. And I used to actually drive 2 hours, 2.5 hours, almost 3 hours to get there to Sonora every Monday to go train with him. And I trained for 2 hours and I drive home. And I did that probably for the last 4 years until we had our first child, and so it was worth it to me. And then I would do some other training down here in the area where I lived, in before I went back up. But I've always had that, like, as far as to me, it's always been about martial arts. And like when I got into Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, because I was like, I want to do something that I haven't done before. I didn't really have a lot of experience in the ground, etc. I had been around for UFC 1. I watched it when it first aired. It started in the 90s, but it just wasn't around here. But I found that once I got into it, I found, like you said, it was very like the sport had eclipsed it, and you just really didn't talk about it very much. And I remember looking at, before I started, I was looking at like the Gracie Combatives course, and what they were showing. I was like, oh, that's pretty cool stuff. But you never saw any of that stuff in class. You didn't talk about it, but it's there. It's just people don't talk about it. It's like some of the things you were showing about, like on your videos, as far as like mount escapes, against punches. A lot of that stuff is like just basic, underhooks and tying the bicep, to not get crossface, but also not to get punched in the face. So it's the same positions, but it's just people just don't mention it, or they don't know it. I don't know. I mean,
I think that's a big thing with it, right? I mean, I think that's the a lot of what isn't really talked about, I feel like, in fundamental jiu-jitsu, because I think you still go into a lot of places and they say that they're teaching you self-defense, but at the same time, your second class, you're going to be working daily. It's like, so it's a lot of the principles stay the same. A lot of the mechanics stay the same. A frame is a frame, a wedge is a wedge. It's just like, how many different purposes can it have?
Right.
So I always try to contextualize. And this, I do a lot of seminars at places that, because I'm kind of like friendly to step outside of the community. It's like, I'll go to this school over here that's very sport oriented. I'll do a workshop on butterfly guard, but then I'll go over to this school over here that's primarily a Krav Maga school, and they don't have any ground game at all. They want to have some foundational tools to, if nothing else, survive on the ground until they can get back to standing. So it's
right.
And I think, whatever, man, it's all good. Like, there's no place, in my opinion, for snobbery or pretentiousness of saying, like, well, this over here is crap. We're the only ones doing the real thing or the good thing. This over here is crap. I think that's a good way to kill the value of martial art, and I think it's a good way to drive people away from it. I don't think that many people come into, depending on what age you are, but for the most part, these days you'll get a lot of people that will say, well, I want to learn that UFC stuff. But before that, even to this day, overwhelmingly, most people that step into a martial arts school, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu or otherwise, they want to learn self-defense. They want to learn how to fight, right? And they know that those Jiu-Jitsu guys are badasses or something, and so they want to go and they want to learn the good stuff. And so I think that, it's important to contextualize with people like that. It's important to be intellectually honest with people like that. And not, if I have somebody come in and their first class that they come to is more of a sportive class, or it's more of an intermediate class, we'll allow them to come in, and I'll probably put them with someone who, can help them through the techniques. But I always try to make sure that I'm expressing and contextualizing for this person. Like, look, this is not what you're going to do in a street fight. This is gonna be good, and there's a variation of this that is going to be more applicable to a self-defense situation or for MMA or for whatever. But this variation that we're doing, this version we're doing tonight, is going to be a little more sport oriented, a little more Ghee dependent, a little more whatever. And I think it's not hard. It shouldn't be hard for an instructor to contextualize that. But I think that like a lot of people just don't want to mess with it. I think a lot of people just want to say like, you're going to come in and whatever I'm going to teach, you're going to learn, and don't question me. I think that's a bad attitude.
Yeah. I agree. So when did you make the decision to start your YouTube channel? Because I mean, I think your service is really good. You really provided a lot of good information and stuff to think about. And so I guess, when did you start the idea? I mean, how did you get to that?
Well, this thing called YouTube came out, and so we, me and a buddy of mine, Jared Jessup, who he still teaches about an hour worth of me, and we've made several instructionals together, and we've trained together for a long time. We don't train as much as we like to these days, it's life, but we decided when we were purple belts, like I think me more than him, but I was like, we should do it like a technique of the week and put it up online. And, YouTube was in its infancy. I think the first video I made was in 2007. I think YouTube came out 2006, if I'm not mistaken. And so, of course, we made a couple videos, and then, it became more like technique of the month or every 2 months or something. It was inconsistent, just for fun. And, I throw a video up every once in a while. And then after about 10 years of doing that, I had amassed an incredible 6,000 subscribers to my YouTube channel after 10 years. And so it wasn't going anywhere. I never really expected it to go much of anywhere. And then something just happened. I guess like it's just how things happen. I put out a couple videos within about a week of each other. And within a few months, I started getting like tens of thousands of new subscribers for some reason. And then that got me a little bit more attention, and I, started to take it more seriously, and started, to try to put a little more quality, a little more information into it, a little bit better, whatever. And then I got asked by, some different resources to do instructional videos, and that in turn, brought more attention back to my YouTube channel. And so it just kind of happened from there. And it's just, I've been very fortunate since then that it's grown pretty precipitously, like past that. So that's basically it. I just did it for fun, and now I take it a little more seriously because it's like a real thing.
Yeah, nice. So you did mention instructionals, and you have 6 instructionals on BJJ Fanatics right now, and they all look really good. But one in particular caught my eye, and it's titled "Ghee to Street Self-Defense" by Eli Knight. And can you give an overview of what's included in that instruction?
Yeah, I hate that title. I hate things that say street in them. Honestly, I kind of hate things that say self-defense in them. Like it's because I know kind of the connotation that it immediately is a polarizing kind of connotation to it, and it just sounds. I mean, it sounds corny, man. Let's be honest. It's kind of street stuff, street legal stuff is kind of corny. I even joke about it in a lot of my videos. But, honestly, like we were sitting there like, man, I don't know what to call this, because we're talking about how do Ghee techniques translate to just clothing, clothing material, jackets, t-shirts, whatever. Because it's something I get asked about a lot. People, like, anytime you show somebody, oh, look, you can do this with a hoodie, just like you can with a Ghee, or you can do this with a hoodie not like a Ghee. People are enthralled by it. And I think it's cool too. Like whenever I see somebody use like a clothing technique, that's pretty freaking cool,
Yeah.
And I mean, why do people go to hockey games? They want to see the fights. They want to see somebody grabbing the jersey and holding it and punching the other guy. And I literally half an hour ago, I was having a conversation with a kid who was asking me about karate. And I was like, yeah, karate is a grappling martial art. Like it's like it just doesn't look like it the way that most people teach it these days.
Mhm.
Because I mean, over time it got watered down. It's harder to teach grappling techniques to a group of 50 or 100 people
Mhm.
because you have to be hands-on. You have to demonstrate it like that. You have to go around and hands-on correct. Whereas I can have 500 people line up and put them in horse stance and teach them reverse punches and high blocks and front
Mhm.
kicks. But that doesn't mean that karate sucks. It just means that the interpretation and translation of it is different. But if you
Mhm.
look at old texts and old manuals, and I'm getting back to the instruction you asked about,
Mhm.
I'm not deviating too much.
No, I
It's
get
a
it.
little bit of
Yeah.
a tangent, but it's look back at the old text and see how they were dressed, how they were
Mhm.
grabbing, the
Uh-huh.
moves that they were making,
Mhm.
and then you'll start to look at some of the forms, whether it's Okinawan karate or Japanese or whatever, and you'll see where the throws fit in. You'll see where the
Uh-huh.
takedowns are. You see where
Uh-huh.
the like neck restraints and
Uh-huh.
clothing holds while they're striking.
Uh-huh.
Those things all exist in traditional karate in the history of it.
Mhm.
So it's not in that sense. Like I feel like it's something valuable to look at and to understand, to
Mhm.
know and to study,
Mhm.
to have application, because otherwise what I think that it's again, it goes back to that whole context thing. It's
Mhm.
if we can contextualize this is actually fight applicable, even though we are using the grips of the gi and whatever, but there are some little modifications, little technicalities that you have to be aware of so that you're not
Mhm.
getting just bashed in the face while you're trying to grab this person's clothing. But
Mhm.
yeah, I mean that was actually a really fun one to make, and it's been a really popular one
Mhm.
because nobody else really tackles
Right.
that subject very much. And just but like I said, man, I didn't know anything good to name it.
Mhm.
It's like
Right.
the names of some of these instructionals, man. Like there's another one that's like Kimura's for the street, and a part
Yeah.
of that too was because whenever I got in with BJJ Fanatics, they were particularly looking to get some good information, some good videos uh, for their self defense side, because they
Right.
have the effective self defense offshoot. And BJJ Fanatics is a fantastic company.
Mhm.
Bernardo and Michael are fantastic people. They're
Mhm.
generous, like great human beings that work with some of the best in the world. I mean,
Mhm.
some of the best people on the planet have instructionals for them. But man, some of the self defense stuff is just hard. It's tough to sort through good self defense
Mhm.
out there.
Yeah.
So I wanted to make sure that I was trying to get the best information, the best quality that I possibly could for that topic,
Uh-huh.
and then eventually weasel my way into the sports side.
Right. Right. Naturally. Well, I mean, like I said, there's nothing wrong with it. I mean, I like the sports side too. I mean, I compete. I did a lot of competition when I first, through white and blue belt and purple now, but and then the pandemic hit. But I like the sport aspect of it. I think there's nothing wrong with the sport aspect of it. That's like in a way, that's sort of the bread and butter of jiu-jitsu nowadays anyway. I mean, that's really what it's really about in the majority of it. But I still like the self-defense aspect of it too. I like to, have both, where, if I, God forbid, ever had to use it to defend myself or a family member or a friend, that, I wouldn't feel, like a fish out of water trying to do it.
Right.
And actually I was just talking to a friend of mine in the academy of the day. We're talking about getting some MMA gloves and just do some, like, one day a week, do some light, touching each other, while
Absolutely.
we're doing jujitsu. And I was going to ask you about that too. Like, are there ways that you can, for the average practitioner who wants to, who's in a, your average jujitsu academy that doesn't really concentrate too much on self-defense, are there ways to incorporate that type of training into your training so you get that aspect of it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I get people ask me that a lot, and I think I love getting that question because it shows that people are interested in doing that. I think that's a really important thing because it's for the posterity of the art too,
Mm-hmm.
the style and everything. So it's and something else that even beyond that is starting to add, because I work with a group up in Ohio with Aaron Genetti and Mike Cheney on something called knife control concepts,
Mm-hmm.
which has been a really excellent program. It's one of the most realistic approaches to training an edge weapon situation in a defensive manner. Not calling it knife defense kind of cheapens it all. It's a methodology of training where there's the potential for an edge weapon to be involved in it.
Nice.
And I think that adds another element of realism to it, because it's not unrealistic to think that when you get to a fight with somebody and this was the premise behind whenever I did the bladed grappler stuff too. It's like, knife defense isn't just somebody pulling out a butcher knife and running at you from 20 feet away. It's, it's somebody getting close enough to you, and maybe a scuffle already starting, a fight already starting, and then them producing the blade they can produce before. But I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but getting back to what you were talking about with implementing, like striking and other things like that with your jiu-jitsu. Yeah, I think it's as easy as you just said. I think getting some MMA gloves or getting some small padded kind of articulated bag gloves, and just going through positions and starting to roll out normal. But when you have the opportunity to maintain control of a position or get the dominant position on someone, and then either feign or lightly apply striking to it, that opens up, because the first thing you start to see with people who are not accustomed to training that way is that they're hyper defensive. And you're going to take somebody with a very high skill level, and all of a sudden now they're covering up. They're not taking the chances of exposing different spaces they were going to do. Because I think that on the ground, striking should be used economically. And this is what you see the most effective ground and pound people, not just the biggest, most brutal people, but the people who are economical with their strikes on the ground. They use it to progress the position. The striking helps to set up the wrestling, and grappling. Grappling helps set up the striking. It's positional dominance and then striking, or it's this space is open when I need it to be closed, so I'm going to throw this punch. It's going to close that space. Now I can progress my position, or vice versa. I'm going to use this to open this space. So it's, I think that when people started taking that approach to it, it's not just like, okay, I've got to punch this guy as soon as I can, as many times as I can. It's once you start to realize that those things need to work in harmony together, then that changes the game a lot. Right. That's one of the beautiful things about combat jiu-jitsu. I think combat jiu-jitsu is a fantastic. When that first came out, it was like, well, so you're basically taking MMA, but you have to use open hands, and you can't hit each other standing. You got to wait till it's on. This is weird, But then when you saw it applied, you saw it in competition, how it played out. Man, that's an evolution.
I thought it was intense.
That's a forward step. It's absolutely.
Yeah.
Now there's been knockouts in it.
Yeah, the palm heels. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Wow. Yeah. It's not slaps. It's slaps. No. Nobody throws slaps anymore. Man. They're throwing boss root and style palm strikes.
I mean, those are straight palm strikes. Palm strikes are powerful. I mean, like I said, I did karate all that before, for years. I know what that stuff, how powerful it is. It's powerful. I would rather palm heel somebody in the face than punch him any day of the week, or elbow him, or
you're less likely to break your hands.
Yeah. So much more power. It's just ridiculous. And you mentioned that, and thanks for answering my question as far as I had to add it in. I'm gonna try it and see how it goes, and it'll be an interesting experiment. Although I am hoping that, I'm excited about it because I was watching the videos you put out, and I was like, oh, he's doing a lot of the same positions I already do. So maybe I could figure out how to use the stuff I've already been doing in that context, and it'll fall together a little bit. But
and then throw you a training knife nearby that you're both having to grapple to try to get to, and then see what happens when one of you gets it. That's a whole nother shitstorm, man. So.
Oh yeah. And so I was going to ask you too, did you ever see the movie Surviving Edge Weapons?
Surviving Edge Weapons, the movie?
It's a documentary. Well, it's like I saw it in the police academy years ago, and it's like, I think I still even have a copy of it somewhere, but it was an old movie made for law enforcement. Oh, please froze up. Hold on. There you are. Okay.
Oh, there, we're back.
So yeah, it's a movie that I saw years ago in the police academy, and it's a movie made for law enforcement for training, and it had Danny Santo in it doing the knife attacks, which I was like, why would they? It's like people who don't know who he is, it doesn't matter, but I knew who he was, and I was like, oh my god, that's ridiculous. But but my point is, I saw the film, and I wasn't scared of guns anymore. It was just knives. Knives are scary. I mean, what are your? I mean, you were talking about knife defense earlier. Like, what are your thoughts on that subject?
I think that's probably one of the most horrifying propositions. And I think I think there's Well, I think that it's a really important thing to recognize, and the thing that I like about a lot of the work that putting it into a grappling context, because I think a lot of the knife defense you see, like historically, it's like you got this, like it's like that Jim Carrey skit on Living Color. It's got this unrealistic attack of here from
Mm-hmm.
across the room, and then you block and you do these steps, and it's never going to play out like that. It's like the
Right.
Detroit urban survival guy doing something, and the I think that what is more realistic, if you're going to survive a knife attack, it's going to be from wrestling. It's going to be from
Right.
running and wrestling. You know,
Okay.
it's not going to be a simple 1-2 step process. It's going to get messy. It's going to be, but I think some of the most effective things that I've seen comes just from straight wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
It's 2-on-1s, it's arm drags, it's tie, it's clinch, it's controlled takedowns, it's wrestling style ground positioning. It's not a lot of guard work. It's not a lot
Mm-hmm.
of not a lot of like sportive jujitsu, but it's definitely fundamental principles of grappling that
Mm-hmm.
are going to survive those kind of attacks. And so I think that's a really important. Now, I think the two schools of thought are, that's a really important consideration, but um, a lot of people are like, you're just going to die. You get attacked with a knife, you're not going to fight your way out of it. You're going to, you're going to either run away and survive, or you're going to die.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, and people who are like serious about training different martial arts actually have that opinion. And I'm like, man, what a lazy mentality. What an absolutely worthless way to view that.
Mm-hmm.
And prejudicial and everything else. I'm like, man, if you view this as a real problem, a significant real threat problem in a self-defense situation, you claim to, care about self-defense at all, that should be a consideration for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Now the other thing about it too is, even if this you don't expect to get into a fight, especially not a deadly confrontation or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
which I think most people don't, but even if not, I think that it's fun,
Mm-hmm.
and I think you can't discount a lot of the time the fun factor of
Mm-hmm.
training anything martial arts related, and even something like a knife related. Because
Mm-hmm.
when you, like I said before, like if you start out, you get a room full of people grappling, right? You get a room full of people who just, okay, you got to go ahead, start rolling,
Mm-hmm.
whatever, 50%.
Right.
And they're just rolling through, they get in positions, trying to catch each other, trying to escape this and that. And then you take like a little rubber training knife and you toss it their way within arm's reach. It's
Mm-hmm.
like whoever gets to it first, they can stab the other one with it.
Mm-hmm.
And they're now all of a sudden the intensity goes through the roof. Positions go to shit a lot of the
Mm-hmm.
time. They it starts to get real messy real quick, because they both get tunnel vision on that weapon.
Mm-hmm.
Now, now that's just a rubber training.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if it's an actual thing with a blade and a point on it, the intensity is through the roof. The adrenaline is through the
Right.
roof. So now all of a sudden, things have greatly intensified. And the underlying thing about it is, well, then all of a sudden some things start to happen. You start to see people like grappling with a knife, and it's like people will give up quickly.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, okay, oh, you would have got me there. Dang it. Okay, so let's stop and start over. It's like, that's not really an option. I mean, like, just because you got me in a position and you stabbed me, I got to train to keep fighting past that.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I make sure to mention whenever I'm teaching knife defense stuff. It's like, just the fact, the idea of doing this overwhelmingly is the same reason you do any kind of martial arts. The main benefit that anybody gets out of any kind of martial arts is inoculating themselves to the most stressful environment possible. That's the best benefit anybody can get out of training anything, is getting to the point where you don't just freeze up. If you can
Right.
get to a point where you're willing and capable of keeping fighting, even if you got hit, you got tackled, you got knocked to the ground, somebody cut you, somebody shot at you, whatever it is,
Mm-hmm.
you develop the wherewithal to be able to fight even in that environment. That's what you're supposed to get out of it.
Yeah.
Because that's what's going to keep you going. Now that I don't remember where we're going with that, but yeah, as far as like my feeling on training in a weapons based environment or something like that, I think is
Mm-hmm.
extremely valuable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean that's the one thing I got from the traditional jiu-jitsu I did is I felt like that was the benefit was the weapons. It was I learned how to do really good akemi, like break falls and how to take falls, and which I think is a great life skill. And I still think is sort of just brushed over in a lot of arts are not even covered. And I think, I mean, here's a great example. I have never had to defend myself against a knife or anything like that. Like I have had a gun pointed at me, but I haven't had to be in an altercation yet where I've had to like wrestle for a knife. But I don't know what are those things called. It's like you stand on them and they're motorized and they have no hand. There's nothing to hold on to. It's like it's sort of like a
Oh, like
scooter.
a Segway.
Segway, that's right. But there's
Yeah.
no handle on it. It's just the one that used to
Oh,
be
like a hoverboard.
hover, sort of like that.
Yeah.
I got one of those. My kid got one. Probably one of my girls got one about 5 years ago, right? And so I'm on this thing and I'm in the living room and I'm going and it went this way, that way, and then I went boom up in the air. And I mean, I caught air. I was like 3 or 4 feet off the ground, and I did a side break fall out of it. And I got up and walked away from it. So
Right.
that to me is like a life skill, and I think that's something I really got out of that system. And learning how to use edge weapons and the difference between edge and impact weapons, flexible weapons, etc. Projectiles. Those are all cool things. I think that just having the familiarity with those things, that if you ever do face them, it's not foreign, it's not alien. You can deal with it. And I think the other or the other thing I would mention about what you said about other instructors saying you should run or just, or accept to die is like, then why are you doing martial arts?
Right.
I mean, at all. Why not just go run track every day and worry about that? How fast you can get. I mean, what if the other guy's in better shape than you, he runs you down? Then what are you going to do?
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I think what you're, I think definitely break falls are overlooked as a self-defense technique, overlooked as a fighting technique. Because you can slip and fall off a curb and hit your head, or somebody can shove you and fall back and hit your head. It doesn't matter. All the martial arts in the world, if you're unconscious now, it doesn't really matter anymore. So learning how to develop that kind of break fall ability and beyond that situational awareness, all that, and then how to recover standing up after break falling. I mean, those are important parts of the process that people kind of skim over in order to get to, how do I do an arm lock? How do I do a choke?
Yeah, I see that in my experience with jiu-jitsu. I've seen that where break falls and rolling is just like skimmed over. It's trained very minimally, and it's really not really taught, and I think it should be more seriously taught, but that's just my opinion. Even like, I don't know, we're getting off topic a little bit, but even like the idea of like, like I can't remember the name of it. I know it's in judo, and I did it one day where I was at the academy and one of my friends who's a pro MMA fighter hit through me. Like he did it slow and controlled, and we're playing around. He hit through me, and I went underneath it, and I rolled him over again. I don't know if you can visualize it. How you basically turn underneath them like as a 10 roll and you take it down. And I was like, see, that's another great thing. It's just the ability just to use your body and know how to place it, and just from all the rolling and akemi I did. I think it's just a good skill. It's just body awareness. So I don't know. That's just my opinion. Let's see. We already went over a lot of questions I was going to ask you. Well, we are back. Okay.
Oh, there you are.
There we are. Sorry.
That's all good.
So as you've aged, I want to ask you this for the older audience such as myself, because I think I am older than you. How has your jiu-jitsu adjusted as you've aged? Because you've done this longer than I have, but
well, I definitely I'm still learning a lot of those ways that it's different, because sometimes I forget that I'm 45 and not 25. And I'll let myself get folded in half, and I'll let myself get all twisted out of shape. And there's some flexibility that I've always had that I discover something new each year that I'm like, oh, I'm not as flexible that direction anymore, or I have to kind of armor myself a little bit that direction so it doesn't lead to an injury. But yeah, I think a lot of it is injury prevention and management. Like I think more than anything else, I think it's just like keeping that kind of awareness and listening to your body and treating it better, that for me, especially treating it better than I did when I was younger, as far as you need more rest, recovery comes slower. Your nutrition has to be a little more on point, because you're gonna kind of feel the effects of what you're putting in your body a little bit sooner. And it's going to take a little bit longer to overcome those things. So those, just basic life kind of things. But as far as like the stylistically changing, kind of fundamentally, some of the things, I'm a little heavier and stronger than I was when I was younger. But, again, the certain things like speed wanes, flexibility wanes a little bit. So, trying to just kind of figure out, well, position by position, technique by technique, you have to be more pristine on your technique, because it's like, I could fudge a couple steps in this process setting up this arm bar when I was 27, but now I have to be precise, and I have to make sure they're trapped every step along the way, and I can't skip a step, because they're going to get free, and they're going to probably escape the position because they're younger, stronger, faster than me, or something like that. So I think that's the good thing, that if you're training intelligently, you're really spending the time on the repetitions of the technique and the drilling of the technique, and not just going in and butting heads with people live rolling like you're trying to kill each other every single session. I think that's you're going to fundamentally be sharpening the technique you can apply in a little more structured, regimented kind of way that's going to be a little more sustainable. But I mean, that sustainability, I think, is a really important thing. But you also, it's a balance. It's definitely a balance, because I see people who are like, a few years younger than me talking about, I'm too old to really roll like this or that anymore. It's like, maybe you're kind of used a little bit too much of a crutch on your age too,
right?
Because you can definitely push yourself a little bit even at different ages. You just have to. A buddy of mine said it really well. He said, your body will do almost anything you ask it to do, as long as you ask it nicely.
Right. Now, that's a good way to say it. Yeah. I mean, I'm 50, so I mean, I train a lot, and I lift weights and do all that, but so it's just I don't feel old. I mean,
same here.
Yeah, it's like
more than others, but
yeah. I mean, I have people in the academy tell me, well, you're this age or you're that, and it's like, well, but I don't feel it. Stop telling me I'm supposed to feel a certain way, So I don't know. But is there? So do you do any type of strength conditioning or anything just to stay in shape, or?
Yeah, I've definitely been more serious about that. In my 40s, I'm 45 now, and so and at different times in my life, I've been more into it or not. But now I see a little bit more the value of rather than just going to the gym and trying to develop beach muscles. It's like going in and thinking about, okay, this more functional exercise is going to help me in this area or that area. Trying to get things that aren't going to do things that aren't going to be hard on my joints, but instead, build the areas that are going to reinforce those joints, that are going to help protect and help to armor, rather than to, just get bigger, stronger, more explosive, see how much weight I can put up on the bench press, whatever.
Right.
Even though, I still like to do some of that too, but it's like, ultimately what I'm mostly concerned about now is creating a physicality that's going to help to support and sustain my ability to train and my ability to recover, and my ability not to develop too much strain on joints and bones and everything else whenever I am training.
Right.
And then, other supplemental stuff too. I think that strength training is an extremely important thing, but it has to go hand in hand with nutrition. It has to go hand in hand with recovery, and not only like sleep recovery, but recovery services like massage. I think is great. Chiropractic, I'm a big fan of chiropractic things, and other things too. I mean, there's lots of other stuff to do as far as like cryotherapy and sauna, and all of it's good. It just depends on what your resources are and the time that allows.
What type of diet do you follow now? Do you have anything particular? You mentioned eating earlier.
I mean, I got a diet that I like to follow, but as far as like how strict I am on that, I think I eat pretty good. Unless you ask my girlfriend, she's going to tell you otherwise.
Right.
But, yeah, I mean, I again, I try to listen to my body, and I know like I know what I'm going to suffer for if I eat,
Mhm.
and I know what early in the day, middle of the day, and then late in the day, what I need to be eating and the composition of that kind of stuff. So I'll pay more attention to the macros, and then for the micros, I typically like do supplements. I
Mhm.
make sure that I get like decent like vitamins and different like nutritional supplements for the
Mhm.
stuff that whenever my diet's not on point, I'm still making sure that I get those things that I know I'm going to need for proper processing and recovery and everything as well.
Right.
But no, I mean, I don't follow anything like specific as far as like keto, vegan, carnivore, or anything like that. It's just
Mhm.
I'm omnivorous, and I try not to eat completely processed crap. So
No, it makes sense. It makes sense. As far as the supplemental, what have you ever tried the greens or anything like that? Or
yeah, I do greens and reds.
uh,
I've got I forget the company brand, but I do a green powder and a red powder, and mix those together. It actually tastes pretty decent. They put like a little some kind of berry flavor that's really mild. You still taste the grass more than anything, but
right.
it's not horrible. But yeah, I try to do things like that because there's so many like micronutrients in those things, and phytonutrients, all that, and probiotics.
Mhm.
And the gut health is super important because if you have it's crazy how so many of these things work. Like you can have this kind of vitamin deficiency, and then supplementing that vitamin won't help with the vitamin deficiency. You gotta have the mineral that'll help you process that vitamin.
Right.
And
Right.
it gets really complicated. So I feel like if I can get a pretty good broad spectrum kind of thing, and then of course there are certain things I want to make sure that I supplement with as far as like vitamin D and C and stuff like that too. But yeah, I like to hit the macros as much as I can.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I take C, D, E, every magnesium, zinc, and
Mhm.
a couple other things every day. But I'm still looking more into that, like as far as like what else can I take to help supplement my diet, which I think is pretty good. But again, it's like I don't want to. I only eat like two times a day, three times on a good day. I'll eat three times. Most days it's two times. Most days two times a day, and I'm just trying to find other ways to like you said, get into the micronutrients in that I need to cover. Um,
Yeah,
it,
I think that this whole pandemic thing kind of exposed a lot of that, right? I
it
mean,
did
because you start looking at the people who were getting the sickest, and then it's like, oh, so all these people had vitamin D deficiency. Oh, that's
right,
interesting. And then on top of that, it's like, oh well, most Americans have vitamin D deficiency.
right.
And then it's like, well, that tells you something right there. And then you start thinking, okay, well, what else are we kind of lacking in our diet, like as a society for the most part? And then, probably that's a good thing to start looking at supplementation for, and starting to look to see if you can get more of that stuff in your diet and everything. So,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, I take 4,000 IE of vitamin D a day. I think about upping it. I'm thinking about trying six.
Yeah,
I mean, it's
man.
just
I've heard up to, people say all the way up to 10. I
yeah,
was listening to who was it? Shoot, she's a really fascinating nutritionist.
Donna
She's on
Patrick.
Donna Patrick. Yes,
Okay.
that's her. I listened to
Mhm.
her. Um, I heard her the first time on Joe Rogan's
Mhm.
podcast, and I started
Mhm.
following her and watching a lot of her stuff. And she's got great information. Like I
Yeah.
listen to a lot of hers, and I think she's really got her finger on the pulse of what most people need to be
Mhm.
supplementing if they're not already. So
What did she recommend for vitamin D?
yeah, she says she takes like 10,000.
Wow.
Yeah, and so
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
and so the big thing on that, taking like a ton of vitamin C or vitamin D, people worry about the effect it's going to have on your liver, and it's like, well, then take vitamin K. It's going to
Yeah.
help your liver with the
Mhm.
processing of
Mhm.
that stuff in the proper way, and so it can all be done. It's a lot of homework, I think, for a
Right.
lot of people. So,
That's it. I think that's part of it is people don't want to have to do the research. But yeah, it's a good point. But and the reason why I keep bringing up vitamin D is because I heard something, and I believe it is that there's no cold and flu season. There's a low vitamin D season, and
I
that's why we get
100% believe that.
and that's why we
Yep.
get more infections. And I mean, I'm sure people can hear it in my voice. I'm actually getting over some right now that I got a nice cold for Christmas. It was awesome. But it is what it is. Uh,
Yeah.
what about So as far as the dieting, I mean the macronutrients, you just basically it's animal protein and carbohydrates and like rice and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, something that kind of stuck with me a long time ago whenever I was, looking at the Gracie diet because, I was
Mhm.
just head, ass, and elbows into everything Gracie Jiu-Jitsu lifestyle.
Mhm.
I was looking at the Gracie diet. I even tried to follow that for a while. It didn't, I don't think that there's a one size fits all diet out there. And but the thing that I did really get out of the idea behind the Gracie diet is just the simplicity of it,
Mhm.
and which doesn't sound very simple when you say, well, this group here doesn't combine with this group, and this group
Right.
over here can have one of, but not this. That seems complicated, but basically at the root of it, it's um, eat things with less ingredients.
Mhm.
Like if you just follow that, try to keep the bulk of the foods you eat, like the meals that you eat, like 5 ingredients or less. And if you
Mhm.
start doing that, and it's not just crap ingredients, obviously, but just
Right.
keep the ingredients simple
Mhm.
and don't eat highly processed things, then that right there is pretty good. Now, then on top of that, if you start to think about, okay, well, let's balance this out a little bit and realize that the food pyramid doesn't make any sense at all.
Right.
And that, a lot of the things that conventional wisdom of 20, 30 years ago don't hold up to what science tells us today.
Mhm.
um, then you're going to be doing pretty good. And then I think another part of it too, I think one of the best things you can do dietarily, I don't know if that's a
Yes.
word, but
Yes.
I think that one of the best things you can do for yourself in that manner is to look at your physicality, your body type, your blood type, even things down to that, and then
Mhm.
seeing, like what um, different foods are going to do for you. I think there's some foods that you can consider almost perfect foods, like avocados. But
Mhm.
it's perfect for almost everybody. Well,
Mhm.
not for people with avocado allergies.
Right.
So you
Right.
start to see things like that, and it's like there's not a one size fits all kind of thing. So mainly, it's just been a process for me over the years of kind of listening to my body, knowing what I operate on best.
Mhm.
What how much protein I can eat, how much is going to weigh me down, how much is going to make me feel sluggish, how much
Mhm.
fat content that I need, which is something that um, you know, people just until recent times started to shun away from fats, and then all of a sudden now we realize that we're not eating enough fat,
Right.
things like that.
Right.
Yeah, that was a little bit of a tangent, but I don't remember what exactly the
No,
question
I
was,
know.
but it
I
was.
asked you about micros, but no, it makes sense. Actually, it's interesting because I actually just bought the book, The Racing Diet. I wanted to check it out and
Mhm.
see what it was about, so
Yeah.
I bought it. And I looked at the chart in the front of the book, and I got it, and I was like, well, crap, I already eat like this. For the most
Right.
part, it's really just the combinations. I mean, there was like one rule I was breaking is I was putting like crushed up almonds in my oatmeal. You're not supposed to, do like a fat source with like a starch. So I was like, okay, well, I messed that part up. But I want to read the book, and I might try it out for a couple months and just see how I like it. I don't think it's gonna be a big alteration from what I currently do, but I'm gonna check it out.
Yeah,
Cool.
it's worth checking out for sure. I mean, again, I don't think it's for everybody, and I
Mhm.
think that there's certain things that people don't consider. Oftentimes, I think about diets that um, just because like they look at a person over there that are on this diet and they look great, they feel great, they're doing awesome, their energy levels through the roof,
Mhm.
they're nailing all the things. But then this person over here tries the diet and they do it to the T, and it just doesn't have anywhere that it has the opposite effect on them.
Mhm.
Well, I mean, that could be a number of reasons that could happen. I mean, this
Mhm.
person may need their metabolism may be different, their allergies may be different,
Mhm.
their their geography may be different.
Mhm.
You can't take somebody and expect to get the same results on a 5 foot Chinese guy as a 6'3" Brazilian guy. They're from two different geographies, and so
Mhm.
probably they've been raised in an area where the food that grows there, the natural um, the natural composition of it is going to be different, and probably what they were raised on, just because of the access to food. You know, you put them on a dramatically different geographical diet, and they're going to have a really weird response to it.
Right.
And that's something that it's one of those weird things that you don't really think about. You think, well, they're going to eat healthy food and they're going to have this response to it. No, not always. So you got to find, it's a big trial and error process. And it's an ever evolving one.
Yeah. I mean, I've heard that too. Like there's like a theory behind certain foods are better for you based on your ethnic background, or, where your ancestors came from, what part of the world and what continent, and, what, those type of foods that would, that would be more beneficial to you as far as how they affect your body. There's been studies done on that. There's probably some truth to that. And as far as like the Gracie diet, the only part of the Gracie diet from the outside, but this is not a statement made based on extreme knowledge of the diet, but just what I've seen from the outside is that the amount of fruit consumption is like, oh my God, that sort of turns me off. I'm just like, I don't want to eat that much fruit. I don't want to eat that much fruit. Yeah.
It's quite a bit.
Yeah, it's quite a bit of fruit.
I remember going to, we were at a camp one time, and I remember the morning in the cafeteria before the training started, and they would bring out, I remember there was a table with food on it and everything, and this guy went to get, there was a big pile of bananas over here. It's probably like 15 bananas. And somebody went over there to like get one because it looked like it was part of the rest. So I was like, oh, those are voices.
Oh.
It was basically like, wait, the whole thing, those are all voices bananas. It's like, yeah, he's gonna eat all those during the course of the day. And then there was pretty strictly just for Elio. And Elio would just sit there, and it was like a machine. He'd grab this orange and just like here, and it was like one of those machines, and it just peel the whole thing off in like one peel, and he would eat 15 of these oranges.
Jeez.
So they're very, very serious to the T. Somebody was telling me that about 40 had taken Kenner and Huron when they were little to a birthday party where they were handing out candy to the kids, and like they didn't know what it was. They thought it was like toys or something. They didn't. They hadn't been exposed to candy whenever they were 5 and 6 years old or something. And
wow.
So they're very serious about this.
Yeah. That's what I heard. They're very they're very, very intense about it. What's the most injury you've ever suffered in jiu-jitsu?
The worst injury. It's hard to say the worst because that could be the most chronic or the most intense. Because the most chronic are my back and my neck, probably. Because I've got like degenerative discs with a bunch of bone spurs and stuff, and so my spine is kind of a wreck on my neck and my back. My knees right now, my left one is my good one. My right one has trouble stabilizing because it's just shredded in there. I've only broken only things I've broken my hand, a rib, and a toe. Like I've been lucky on that front, so I don't think I've broken anything else.
No.
Then the typical kind of tendonitis thing. I've had to deal with a lot of that stuff, like inflammation and tendonitis and stuff over the years, rolled ankles and whatever. So nothing catastrophic, but definitely my back and my neck are they're pretty restrictive. Like my ability to bridge is not the best these days. I gotta kind of armor it because I can tell when it's sneaking up on me.
Right.
And that's getting back to the nutrition thing again. I know when I'm dehydrated and I'm training, like I'm just asking for an injury. I'm asking for like a bad muscle strain or a bad muscle pull. So,
how much water do you drink now? I mean, do you really pound water to keep up with it?
I try to hit a gallon a day.
Yeah.
And usually I'm pretty close. So.
Yeah, I tried. Man, when I was younger, I would hit a gallon, even sometimes 2, like in my 30s a day, depending on what I was doing. But yeah, like last couple of years, it's been really tough for me to keep up to a gallon a day. I tried as hard as I can, but it's been tough. I just get busy with work and
I know I'm bad about it too. Like I find that when I bring a gallon jug with me, like that I know this is a gallon. Like I at least got to kill this today. So I'll keep it with me everywhere I go. I keep it on the mat with me while I'm training, and so it's like that. That's been the best device for me to have something that's literally a gallon to make sure that I at least drink that much.
Right.
In addition to, anything else. And then on days that I work out, I have like an amino acid supplement that has it's supposed to have like a hydration thing in it. It's got EAAs and BCAAs, and then it's got some other stuff in it too. And it's got, I forget what it has for the hydration. But, actually, over here, I don't know what it has, but it's so that's usually in addition to my electrolyte and hydration optimizer, taurine, calcium, potassium phosphate citrate, sodium phosphate, and dimagnesium malate, whatever the hell those are.
Nice. And you were once quoted as saying, the hardest opponent I ever fought was myself, which was a reference to the inner battle that many BJJ practitioners go through in terms of self-doubt. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, when did I see that? It sounds like something I was. Sounds like I was probably trying to get around what the hardest match or fight I've ever been in. Yeah, 100%. I think that's the biggest thing. I'm constantly telling people that usually we're the ones getting in our way more than anything else. But we're the ones that are really holding ourselves back. We're the ones that are doubting ourselves. We're the ones that are scared to succeed. I mean, I think that's a big thing of it. I think it's that's what I like about jiu-jitsu and about watching progress in jiu-jitsu, not just for myself, but for other people. It's about seeing them figure out that they're the ones standing in their own way, and that they're, a lot of the time they're, I call it the dog chasing the car, right? So you're doing a move, and if you're disappointed in screwing it up, or you're overly celebratory or excited and pulling a move off, those are both times it's pretty easy to catch somebody. Right? That's the times where people get caught up and they get the tables turned on. And a lot of times we're preparing for failure more than we are preparing for success. So we're kind of standing in our ways that way. And something I've really become fond of saying lately, and I got this from Lieutenant Colonel Alan West. I heard him give a speech, and I heard him say the phrase, our safety nets should never become hammocks. And man, that just set a light bulb off. Because it is, I'm always talking about having backup plans, but there's a problem with backup plans. There's a good thing about backup plans. They should instill in you the confidence to do that primary thing you were going to do with full fervor, to really attack this thing head on, and know that you have the confidence that, well, if this doesn't work out, if this fails, I've got this backup, and I know what to do if it fails. I know if this doesn't go right, I know what to do. But a lot of the time what happens is, and you see this in jiu-jitsu a lot of time, it's well, I've got this triple combo thing, right? There's this combo I do from here, 3 things. And you start to fall in love with the third thing. It's that's the one I always hit. It's not this first thing or the second thing, it's this third thing. So then what happens? You start half-assing your first thing or your second thing, right? And then now all of a sudden your third thing starts to fail. And it's why? Why does that fail? I was good at that before. That's because I was putting the energy into that first thing or that second thing, and that was eliciting the response and the energy that I needed from that person to create the opportunity for that third thing. When I started to devalue the primary, the secondary and tertiary started to suffer. Right. So that's getting a little bit deeper into it, but I think that's the big thing that we need to be aware of. I need to go into this. If I'm developing a strategy, I need to have this primary plan of action, and I need to go into it with confidence, and I need to go into it with aggressiveness, and really be prepared to succeed with it. But if it doesn't, I know it's the reason it's not gonna work. Why it's not gonna work? He's gonna respond to me in one of 2 or 3 different ways. Now I've got a plan for all 3 of those different ways. If I go for this thing and he shuts me down this way, I've got a plan for that. So I'm gonna flow seamlessly into that. He does it this way, same thing, I got a plan for that. So that's one way that I feel jiu-jitsu can really help people with from a philosophical or mentality or psychological standpoint, it can really help them develop a little more confidence in just kind of their day-to-day activities or day-to-day decision making, everything that way. But ultimately, that the reason that why do people even need help with that? They need help with it because we don't innately have it. We're too scared of failure. We're too worried about failing. We're too worried about letting people down. We're too worried about not living up to our potential, or living up to our potential and then having to deal with all that comes with that.
Right. Right. Well, that makes a lot of sense. So out of all the different, you know how you have drilling, free rolling, you also have situational training, etc. What's your favorite modality to use to improve skill the quickest?
Man, I think that's two different questions in one because I don't like drilling,
Okay.
but because but I think that's the most important part. I think that, and I separate repetition work from drilling. Like I think that because I always separate it like this. You take the technique, you repeat the technique with a compliant partner who's giving you the right situation and the right context to like do that technique repetitively.
Feeding it correctly. Yeah.
Feeding it correctly. Yeah, for sure. And then, so you get the mechanics down, you get knowledgeable enough to it to where you can do it seamlessly and you've got it all out. Now you drill it. Drilling to me is varying degrees of resistance from like extremely mild resistance to like full on resistance. But that's like what you I think called situational.
Yes, the situational drilling. Yeah, for
Right.
training.
So So I think that situational drilling is kind of the step beyond that with that repetition of technique. That's where you're going to find that ability to insert that technique into the live roll, because you can rep out a technique with optimal conditions, with perfect conditions from a compliant partner who's giving you the perfect conditions, and it's never going to materialize possibly in a live roll or in a fight or whatever, because it was never pressurized. Now, when you start to drill it, you add that pressure to it. Now it's more likely that when the opportunity for that technique, when the conditions become optimal in a live roll, it's actually going to materialize because you drilled it with pressure.
Right.
And I think that it can get tedious a lot of the time and exhausting to drill it. Like I think it should be drilled a lot of the time, but I think that's the most valuable thing. If I'm like, I haven't competed in a number of years, but when I did the best, it was because I just drilled the hell out of a strategy, and I did different iterations of it. It's like, okay, well, this is my takedown, and this is my complementary opposite to that takedown. This is my guard pass, and this is my complement guard pass, and this is my complement to that one. Drill that sequence, boom, 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 and then put it into live roll or put it into just like fragmented out live situational drilling. And then I saw that those techniques, those sequences would materialize better into the live action than just if I had spent time on repetition or just time free rolling. Because you can free roll and maybe a certain technique comes up one time in a 30-minute session or hour session.
Right.
Whereas if you drill that technique, 500 times, then it doesn't matter that it comes up one time in a free roll, because you drilled it as much as it needed to be drilled. So that's really the key. And I think that when you see the best people in the world, it seems to me the best people in the world are doing two big things almost more than anything else. They're doing high levels of repetition of drilling, and they're constantly putting themselves in bad situations and then drilling from there out. Because you look at people like Gordon Ryan or Craig Jones or something, it's like, how did those guys get better? There's no way they're drilling with people on their level all the time. Sometimes, yeah, but not all the time. And somebody asked Hickson the same thing years back, whenever Hickson was on a whole different planet than everybody else. It's like, how did you get better? It's like, well, you handicap yourself, and you let yourself get the start in bad positions sometimes, or get put in bad positions. And those are valuable things. And then also just repetition.
That's how Harger did it. Harger Gracie.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's how he trained. Yeah. It was all putting himself in bad positions and fighting out of that area. I think he said he made his defense the best he could. Like he got it like top notch. He knew he escaped from everywhere, and then he put himself in bad positions and fight out of those positions and go from there.
Yeah.
So seemed to work for him.
Saw it, like you saw both times he fought Buchecha, and like his first time he, Buchecha would have caught him in an armbar that would have ripped anybody else's on the planet's arm off.
Yep.
And the second time they met, it was a completely different story, but it was, you see that like that those guys same idea behind watching that EBI with Craig Jones and Gordon Ryan.
Yeah, I was just thinking the same thing when you said that. Yeah,
it was the EBI overtime round, and Craig Jones caught deep armbar on Gordon Ryan, and he just fought tooth and nail, and he got out of it. And those guys have just been there, more times than most people have been in any position.
Yeah, and Gordon said that Craig popped his arm. There was like a couple pops. Yeah, he got him. I mean, he didn't fully break his arm, but he did injure him. But it's the whole mentality too. Those guys have. They're just beasts. They're just like, I don't care. I'm not tapping. I can get broken, but I'm not going to tap. And I saw footage, I think, of Gordon from years back. I think it was a blue or purple belt match where he just snapped this dude's arm from like a Shiro Senkaku with a Kimura and just popped this guy's arm really bad. So, I mean, it happens, I guess. I mean, if you don't tap, you get broken, right? So, but those are like, when you were, before you even said it, we were talking about Hodger, I was thinking that Craig Jones, Gordon Ryan, ABI overtime, that was brutal. I can't believe he got out of that. It was just like,
it was nuts.
It hurt my arm just watching it.
Not many people in the world that would have survived that.
No, incredible. The guy's a beast. What about Ghee versus no Ghee? I always ask this question of everybody, and I'm sure people listening. Oh, hold on, we froze up. Okay, we're back. Okay, sorry. So I asked this question of everybody, and I'm sure people are getting tired of hearing it, but I don't care because I like to ask it. So when it comes to Ghee versus no Ghee, do you have a preference, or do you feel like that one complements the other, or they have different values, or
all those things? Yeah, I do have a preference. I prefer no Ghee over Ghee. Anything that you can do no Ghee, you can do in the Ghee. Not the same, vice versa.
Right.
There's things that are easier to do no Ghee than Ghee, and things that are easier to do Ghee versus no Ghee. And in my opinion, it waxes and wanes, but it's a personal level.
Right.
It's not that I think that one is superior to the other. I could argue either way, like that one is better than the other. But I like no Ghee better these days, personally. They obviously both have benefits for sure. I mean, the friction in the Ghee is obviously a huge factor. The grips is obviously a huge factor. The versatility of attacks. You get on somebody's back in the Ghee, and you've got 50 different ways to attack them, just in chokes probably. And you get on somebody's back in no Ghee, and you've got drastically less. But it's faster, more fast paced. But there's so much creativity that can be applied to both. And the pace can vary so much, and the considerations have to vary so much. There's just a lot of cool stuff about both of them, and I don't dislike Ghee training. I just prefer no Ghee personally.
I'm the same way. I do both about equally, but I prefer no Ghee. I don't know. I think it, for lack of a better reason, that it just feels better.
Yeah, I think so too. I think that's a big reason for me too.
Yeah, I feel like Ghee is like swimming through mud. There's all the friction and everything, and it's just like, wow. It's just when I started doing, because for the first 7 years I didn't really do much. I didn't do a lot of no Ghee because of the scheduling issues. But now it's the opposite, where now I can train it really frequently, and I've really enjoyed it, and my fingers don't hurt anymore, and so I don't know. I just have fun with it, and I feel like it's just, to me, it's like, I like the idea of grappling. Just basically like wrestling with submissions, and I like it. Yeah, it's fun.
Yeah.
So you have, like I said, you have 6 instructionals on BJJ Fanatics. People should absolutely go check those out. You can also be reached at, you have exclusive class content at patreon.com/night jiu-jitsu. You are on Instagram at night_jiu-jitsu or Jew_jiu-jitsu_. You're on TikTok at night jiu-jitsu. Or follow me on DTube. What's a DTube? Is it like another type of YouTube?
It's well, it's yeah, it's based off of this thing called Steam. And this is something that a friend of mine taught me doing a long time ago. It was like crypto driven social media stuff as an alternative to like social media platforms that are mainstream. And he's like, oh, this is going to be big. It's going to be, you know, the next thing. It's going to make money off of crypto, and people love your stuff. And he's telling me all about it. I'm like, bro, if you're this excited about it, and you want to throw my videos on there, then you can keep like, give me some change off of it if it makes money, and if not, then you keep it. I don't care,
right?
Because I didn't feel like fooling with it, and so I put it into I put it in my bios and stuff that it still exists. I don't even know if it still exists, honestly, but it's just another platform I'm on. And I keep telling myself sometimes I'm like, yeah, I should probably be on this platform or that platform, and I'm like, damn, when am I gonna have the time to do that? Like it's just kind of me. I don't have a lot of I don't have social media managers and stuff. I'm not quite there yet. So
right. And then you're on Steam It. What's it? I never heard of that one either. Steam It. Yeah, so steamit.com /jiu at night BJJ. So I'm gonna say that again because I screwed it up so bad. It's steampeak.com / @night BJJ. Okay, so that's what it is on Steam It. So I really appreciate you coming on today and talking to me. It was a lot of fun, Eli. If you ever want to come back on, I think it'd be great. We could, talk about some more self-defense things or particular topics. We can put together if you want to. I'm all for it. But again, I really thank you for coming on and talking to me. I hope you had a great Christmas and you have a happy New Year.
Yeah, same to you, man. And I really appreciate you having me on. I had a great conversation and it was a lot of fun. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. Well, thank you very much. And I'll speak to you soon.
All right. Thanks a lot, Craig.